Well, thank you for joining us. And Michael, great to sit here again. Actually, Michael and I have very regular discussion because this is a topic that really goes to the heart of what we're doing. And I remember 20 years ago, I was leading Citibank's tech center. And we were actually the first to develop internet banking. And I remember that a lot of people told me, great what you guys have done, but nobody's ever going to put their financial information on the internet. And look at where we are today. I think I can safely say that most of us are comfortable doing their payments and banking work on the internet. But I have a deja vu because people tell me, yeah, but that's not going to happen in healthcare because healthcare information is very personal. And that's true. And of course, we need to treat it with utmost security. But I can tell you, financial information is also pretty personal. So, fast forward, we're 20 years down the road, and we're looking at how can we create a holistic view of the patient so that we can use that information to help them take better control of their care. How can we make sure that the devices and the systems that we built as Philips add to that picture, but how can we do that in a secure way? And we're now entering a world of IoT where everything is going to be connected, and some of that stuff may be very personal indeed. Continuous glucose meter, but even a pacemaker, and we probably all saw the Homeland episode where somebody hacked into the pacemaker. So I'm going to ask you, Michael, since you're responsible in our company for product security, what is it we're doing not only to secure our systems, but also to guarantee the confidentiality and the security of all that information related to patients?
So again, I appreciate the opportunity, Jeroen, and yes, it is like a deja vu in terms of coming back from a healthcare perspective. I think number one of the main focal points is to make sure that we design security from the very beginning. And if we put security by design through our processes, that helps to ensure, number one, the security of the systems. Also, if we take a look at the type of data and information and make sure that there is the appropriate encryption of that information, that also enhances our capabilities of making sure that it is in a secure nature. And when I talk about security by design, I'm really talking about the fact that we leverage and have product security officers right sitting there with our R&D engineers. And from the architecture design points, making sure that the most secure elements are in that design. And then in addition to the security components with the design, we also want to make sure that we're doing testing. So we do penetration testing, whether or not it's within our own teams or from external organizations to test it, as well as static type of testing within the life cycle. We feed those vulnerabilities and potential bugs in our testing and our processes, and we continue to iterate to make sure that they're removed.
So I remember 20 years ago when we started designing, let's say, the point of sale system, it was all about encryption. So, there were basically two key areas. So identity and access management. So how do I make sure that the device I'm talking to is really an identified and trusted device? How do I make sure that the person who gets access to that is authorized to get access? And how do I make sure that the conversations are encrypted and actually that information is stored at rest so that if somebody, in the worst case, breaks in, they still cannot use the information. So how do you see that in healthcare? Because I still hear about people get broken into their system and they extract patient information that seems to be in the clear. How do you see it? Do you believe that there's still huge vulnerabilities in existing systems, or is that largely solved now?
No, I think that the principles have been largely solved, but I think that when we look at the systems that are already in the hospital environments, a number of those systems was probably architected originally back 15 plus years ago when you look at our development life cycle. So we have this issue around the legacy of our products and solutions. And what we try to make sure that we do is look at the legacy of those systems, make sure that there's appropriate compensating controls, mitigation that we can put in the environments with our patients, with our customers, to make sure that the patient's pieces are supported, but to make sure that we align on iteratively working with our customers and removing that legacy out of their install base.
I think what you're mentioning is key, because hackers will always look for vulnerabilities, and they typically find the vulnerabilities not in the latest version of the systems and software. They find that in operating systems that have not been upgraded. They're understanding these vulnerabilities. So you're saying something interesting. You say, okay, there will be legacy out there, but how can we encapsulate that legacy and then control basically the gate to that legacy? Is that
Correct.
kind of what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So some of the things that we're doing is looking at technology to be able to encapsulate that legacy and that information with those systems. And if we do that and can protect better that information of those systems, knowing the legacy of the solutions, the better we'll be. Secondly, what we're doing is assuring that because these are legacy systems, again, trying to get them out of the marketplace with what we really need to do in terms of moving with the new technology that has all of the encryption, all of the access points that you just described earlier in place.
So, if you look at, typically if you look at security, you look at the threats. Who are the people actually, providing the threat? Can that be, like what we've seen with WannaCry, a bunch of hackers in Eastern Europe, taking systems hostage and then asking to be paid in Bitcoin? Are there more organized operators that, are after IP? So how do you see the threat landscape?
So we continue to see the threat landscape just accelerating and continue to grow, which is why it is so important and vital, not only for Philips and the programs that we put around threat monitoring and understanding better intelligence around our systems, but we also need to work hand in hand with the CIOs and CISOs within the hospital organizations, because it has to be a total collaborative effort there. And again, that monitoring piece is also something that I see, when you talk about your back to the future, as we look at leveraging, artificial intelligence, business analytics, as we do within our products and platform, also leveraging that same type of data and information when we deploy our systems. And so that's also on the horizon that we're looking at and assessing as well.
I like that idea, because everybody I talk to who are specialists in cybersecurity say, hey, you will be hacked. But it's a matter of noticing it quickly and then taking corrective action. So, if we can start monitoring our systems for, behavior that's kind of deviating from the normal, it's
Correct.
typically a flag that allows you to, take proactive action. I want to get back to what you said. So you basically said, hey, we're now starting to have active dialogues with CIOs and CISOs of healthcare systems. But we have a bunch of common threats. So, are you also? I heard that you're on. I know actually you're on a lot of committees, but I personally believe that Philips is not alone in dealing with threats. Our customers are not alone. So how do you see the collaboration in jointly, scanning the threat landscape and jointly coming up with mitigation action? So what can we do to further collaborate, to create a network of trusted partners that collectively raise the bar on security?
So one of the main areas that we can do is around information sharing and gathering that information with organizations like the National Health ISAC, as well as any of the other globally, certs that we participate with. The more that we can share the vulnerabilities and that information and have those particular nucleus in place, the better that we as an industry can work together on that. They're developing tools in some of the associations that we participate to be able to harmonize and gather that information and be able to more, quickly disseminate that information among our peers.
I have a question there, because I know that a lot of companies are kind of ashamed. They feel, let's not share it. And I feel it should be the other way around. The more, open people are about their threats, and I think the better we can collectively respond to that. But, how do you see the next step? So how can we collaborate better on this? And I know, for instance, within Philips, we have set up our security operating center that we use to 24/7 operate and basically monitor threats and have a collective way of responding to that. So how can we extend that beyond the walls of our own company?
Right.
Because I think we're doing pretty well, but you can never do enough.
You can never.
But I really believe that if we shake hands with some of the people that we trust, can we create a bigger virtual security operations center?
Right.
What's your view on that?
No, I totally agree with that view. Number one, we put in place as a medical device manufacturer, at least over 4 years ago, one of the first organizations that did threat intelligence sharing with our coordinated responsible disclosure process. So we actively look for those threats and vulnerabilities to be communicated to Philips through that process with no reciprocity to any of the researchers and any organizations. So today, for example, we get more intelligence by working with our customers that are in a better position of scanning the solutions and the devices within their environments and being able to work with us on those vulnerabilities and sharing that information. So if you just think of the microcosm of what we do and can then build upon that with other organizations and then share that into, as you said, this one sharing council that can then be utilized and distributed within other organizations in the healthcare system, that's a powerful win-win.
Yeah. So, interestingly, most break-ins are still through a very simple mechanism called phishing, although it's getting more and more sophisticated, even people using artificial intelligence to make their phishing approaches really sophisticated. But at the end of the day, it's still the same thing. You plant something that starts to replicate within a network. So where do you see counter technology going to better identify phishing and basically stop phishing in its tracks?
So I do think that the analytics in terms of the behavioral piece and being able to take a look at, what are those anomalies that you described earlier, I think leveraging that technology in this particular space will help us kind of accelerate against that. Again, it's usually what's inside your own, walls. And so even beyond the technology, having a very strong and robust training and awareness of the employees, of the associates, engineers that have to come into an environment, keeping that very vigilant with, the industry, I think is also just as important.
So, I talked about a trusted circle, our customers, some of the organizations you're working with. Something I've been thinking about is, in the healthcare industry, you have trusted networks and, point of sale terminals or ATMs that are uniquely identified. They have to be part of the network. You cannot just plug in, your own point of sale. So shouldn't we be looking at something like that in healthcare, where we have trusted medical devices becoming part of a trusted network, so that, let's say you have a Philips device that we know is trusted, but it works with a trusted Medtronic device or, a Freestyle continuous glucose meter. So all these devices know that we're part of a trusted family. So how do you see that? Because I don't say we're there yet in healthcare.
So in healthcare, we're definitely not there yet. I definitely believe that's where we need to be aspiring and going. And when you talk about that, that also brings into account a lot of the standards that we need to make sure that we are aligning to. Part of the issue within the healthcare, industry is that there's a myriad of standards and a myriad of requirements that we have as an industry and we try to align to. Number one, Philips has made, our own pledge and direction that we will, have our products and solutions at least to meet the the risk management framework of the Department of Defense,
Yeah.
which is a very
Which
high,
is a good bar
to have.
Yeah.
And so by selecting that bar and having our policies in alignment of the standards, I think if other organizations, as you just described, can also meet those particular types of standards, we can have that trusted environment and be able to share information. And then the other key is around the interoperability.
Yeah.
How we can make sure that these devices are all able to connect and talk to each other and share that information, but in a much more secure way.
Well, I hear an argument regularly that, oh, we don't want to exchange data because, it's not secure, or it will, create integrity issues. I personally believe that interoperability is an absolute must. If we want to progress the state of, healthcare, it is ultimately about integrating data. I want to go a step further. I believe healthcare is becoming an information-driven industry. So I personally believe it's really of utmost importance that we as Philips, but also our colleagues, basically say, hey, we embrace security standards, we embrace trusted networks, and yes, we embrace interoperability, because ultimately it's interest of our customers, the healthcare providers, and it's ultimately in the interest of patients. Because they are the big beneficiary of integrated information. So what's your perspective? I give my personal opinion.
No, again, I don't think that we can be the Internet of Things or technology and make sure that the ecosystem functions at its highest level without those interoperability and ability to share information. And you have to do that based upon at least a common set of standards and a platform that we all can align and agree to. So it's not just like with hacking. It's not if, it's when. So we can only survive by doing that.
Yeah, and clearly this stuff doesn't stand still. It's not like, okay, we have it under control, let's go off and do other stuff, And we know it's going to get more serious. We know that some of the worms and viruses are actually really sophisticated, and some of them may already be in our systems. That's and they're dormant and they will be activated. So, do you believe it's going to get worse? Are the threats going to get worse, or is it leveling off? Should we be more vigilant? Should we be more proactive? My answer is implied, but
No. So again, I totally believe that the vigilance needs to be on like heightened security for for what we need to be looking at. And again, not just the manufacturers. It has to be the manufacturers. It has to be also dealing with the health delivery organizations, our customers, the information that we communicate when someone is using a smart device in terms of the patient. In terms of the regulators, we also just have to collectively make sure that bar is there, because as you just said, the attackers they're downloading and they're letting things be dormant. And if they're dormant, once we put our guards down and think that we're done, is when we have another one. It's almost like clockwork. We were together, as you said, at RSNA and had the conversation. And we've had, Meltdown and Spectre after. So it has been like every time I take.
It's not like nothing happened in the last couple of months. So, it's interesting. I spoke to a couple of people that say, you know what, we're looking at a new generation of connectivity where we just take out IP. The IP internet protocols, because security has not completely be designed in. I talk to other people who say, we're only going to run software on the platform is there mutual authentication between software and hardware. So and then that means we're getting into probably more proprietary environments to guarantee security. So there's a little bit of tension between openness and security here. How do you see that evolve?
So one of the ways that I think it evolves is, as much as we can, and as you stated earlier, we have to be very transparent. And one of the ways of being transparent, and Philips has been very forthright around our positioning, is that we believe and we're pushing the discussions around having a software bill of materials.
Yeah.
And so if we can provide you with the ingredients that is in the, the components of our solutions, whether or not it's third party, open source, and do it in a secure manner so that the customers know when you have that vulnerability or some type of activity that's going to attack them, then I have the ability of saying, wow, I have these particular components, here's the patching that needs to happen to be updated, and I can do that in a much more timely manner. And the more that we can get that executed in a real-time manner and pushed out and communicated with our customers, the better that we all will be.
I think what you said is really important, the software bill of material and the version control and that. I'm a computer scientist. I've been hacking a large part of my life. I know there's no such thing as original software.
Right.
People copy pieces of code, using services, using routines. And it's every system is almost like a patchwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I think getting control over that and understanding where also the vulnerabilities are is essential. But I think ultimately the biggest issue is how can we get together, create an environment where we discuss this openly, we talk about both vulnerabilities and threats and ways to get around that, and start creating these trusted networks. Because if you look at our Health Suite platform, we truly build in security. It's endpoint encrypted, it's very sophisticated identity and access management. Unfortunately, not the whole system is like that.
Right.
So understanding that any system is basically an accumulation of software and systems written over time with different tools, with different parts. The better we understand that, and the better you understand how we encapsulate and isolate where needed, where we open up where needed, I think the better off we are as an industry.
No, I totally would agree with that, because again, in order for that industry to really take off and leverage all of the solutions that and again, we're talking about solutions. This isn't about a one-point product or box that we would sell. We're selling, as an industry, a solution. And in order for us to be able to share and be as transparent and for the most effectiveness and efficiency of that solution, that's the only way it can operate.
Yeah. So, I think it's a good time to wrap up.
Yep.
I think we touched a lot of, topics that are definitely close to my heart. I know that we're making tremendous progress in technology, but also that progress always have unintended consequences. When Microsoft designed their first Windows operating system, they could never anticipate the way it's being used today.
Right.
So, they've been rethinking how they do security. We're working closely with Amazon, and we understand how they create environments that become truly secure, but we also see that everybody is basically on a treadmill here. I think the key point is that yes, we design it in, we're very proactively dealing with our legacy and encapsulating and securing it as much as possible. But ultimately, we really want to create these trusted networks and collaborate with our customers, but also, sometimes our competitors.
Correct.
Because I think we have a collective responsibility to the industry, to our patients, to step up the security. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that we have this big responsibility and commitment that we want to live up to. And I'm very happy to have you on the team, Michael.
No, I appreciate it.
So thanks so much for your good work.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here and discussing this with you. Thank you.
Thank you.